Yeah. If I don't, somebody's going to ruin it for me. Yeah. And I'm going to ruin it somehow, so. Yeah.
I can tell. Everyone will shut up. One of our he had a
Sorry.
Yeah, it's not
one of our athletes had like a game of party over the weekend. It was he dressed his dogs up as dragons. Just like, God, you guys. I can't watch it. I don't. It doesn't do it.
Really? Yeah. Watch Silicon Valley.
No, because that's just like PTSD for me. It's really flashbacks.
You know that guy.
Yeah, no, I can't do that show. It's really
Yeah, I mean, that's what I do. Well, somebody watching.
never seen that either. I work a lot.
I know. Well, honestly, I was thinking of like, I completely forgot about this, so I was gonna go home and I was just thinking, my wife would turn on something and I was gonna break the laptop and just work.
Yeah.
I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore.
Sounds familiar.
Or until Steve yells at me.
Yeah.
Music stopped.
Am I waiting? All right. Hi, Mom. I think Dustin was working with the people at YouTube to make sure we could put this on the tubes.
How about now? All right. Did you get in touch with the people at the tubes? Are we tubing? Sweet. Awesome. Oh, Tyler. Thanks to both Tyler and to our sponsor for both the pizza and the venue and the content, Garmin. So yeah, thank you to Garmin. This is a point where I'm supposed to tell you ahead of time that it's going to be awkward, and I'm going to ask you for announcements. The announcements could be like anything in the community, possibly like other meetups that we should be going to or other conferences, things that are coming up. I think that there is a security conference coming up, and if you have jobs or if you're hiring, or if you just want to like share something with the group. If you had a really good day, like if your dog's doing really good. So do we have anybody who wants to share?
Thank you. On 4/29, Monday, there's a Cloud Foundry meetup. It's going to be sponsored by Pivotal, and we are having some guest speakers come in from St. Louis. It's a format that we tried last month in St. Louis where we had some Kansas City folks go down there. It was very well attended. It was very well received. It's kind of like a mini conference because you have more than one speaker and an opportunity to kind of hang out later and talk to everybody and see what's going on. So anybody interested in Cloud Foundry, let us know. April 29th. Oh, sorry, at the Marriott in Overland Park on Metcalf.
All right, I have an announcement, but I'm going to go last. So does anybody else have another announcement before I go? Okay. Well, that was the point, is that this is supposed to be somewhat awkward and fun.
So there's a Kansas City Java user group, 15 ways to optimize Spring Boot for the cloud. If anybody's interested at YRC tomorrow night, that's on Meetup. Yeah.
And there's a Splunk Kansas City user group on Thursday, and I'm trying to find the location. But so.
Is it in
Thursday night.
Is it in Kansas City?
In Kansas City.
All right.
I think it's an engineering firm on 95th. I'm trying to remember the name of it. 95th and Warren there.
Does anybody know who it is?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, Bernie Mac.
Splunk user group talking about PowerShell, if I remember it.
Everybody catch that PowerShell Splunk meetup at Burns and Mac on this Thursday coming up. I'm going to have to get more information on the Java one because we're actually going to start doing some Spring Boot stuff. So, did anybody else have anything? Carl, did you? Yeah?
So Aaron alluded to it. There's a security B-Sides. B-Sides KC is starts on Friday next week. There's some workshops. I think all the workshops may be full up, but there's then the actual conference is on Saturday next week. There are still tickets available for that if you're interested. bsideskc.org, I believe. So. I'm actually part of the Badge Pirates team. I don't know if anybody is familiar, been to SecKC. We started a badge team as part of, kind of got inspired at DEF CON to do kind of electronic conference badges. And so we started making unofficial badges for the SecKC InfoSec group, and we've kind of started to branch out. We've done B-Sides KC now. This is our second year. And we started kind of working with some other organizations. I have one that I can't talk about quite yet that we're going to be doing here locally in June that's really large as well. It's not a security conference this time, but it's really interesting. I know, and I talked with Aaron and Ryan, if, maybe for DevOps KC, if there was some interest, we could talk about a badge for that as well.
By show of hands, who's familiar with like the badges they do at security conferences? Just a handful of people. We got to change that and make sure that like everybody knows about this, because it's something that security conferences do like almost like every single conference or whatever. There's at least the one, and usually like one of the conferences I went to, they like have like secret things you can do, so you can make it blink and say different things. So it's really a lot of fun, and you can hack it yourself and change the code on it to do different things. So it's pretty rad. I want to make it part of like the DevOps journey too, because the security is part of the DevOps. So. Yeah, if you want to check that out after we do the content tonight, that'd be awesome. Come see Carl. Any other announcements? Anybody hiring? Any things that we want to get out there into the community? All right. I have an announcement, but first I think we want to watch a video. Do we have the video? Oh, yeah. Welcome to DevOps Days, Kansas City. Are you ready to learn? So that was a summary of what happened last year. We brought 400 of our closest friends all in together at the Westport Commons Plex Pod. And we got together and we spent 2 days talking about dev and ops and the DevOps and all of that business. I want to announce right now that this year we will be doing it at Plex Pod Westport Commons again. And it's going to be in October on the 24th and 25th. We're going back to a Thursday-Friday conference this year. And we will be bringing in, very similar to last year, people from the local area that have things to share and people nationally that have things to share. So as of right now, if you go to DevOpsKC.org, there should be a link where you can register. There should be a link where you can join our call for papers and submit something that you would like to speak about. If your company is interested in sponsoring, we should have information about that up there. And the location is now public, so people can talk about it, that we're going to do PlexPod again, which I'm super excited about. So yes. Awesome. And I have some of the t-shirts from last year that did not get picked up. If one of them is yours, too bad we ripped the names off of them. I want you to make sure that we pay attention to the content that we have tonight, because they'll probably have like question and answer afterwards. And that'll be our opportunity to get one of the t-shirts we have from last year. So with that, I'm going to actually hand it over to David.
I've got a mic.
Oh, you're all mic'd up.
Yeah. All right. I did not make it to DevOps Days KC last year. This year I'll make it for sure.
Awesome.
All right. Let's see. Hey. So I want to say a quick shout out to Cloudflare for sponsoring the pizza and for being a pretty cool vendor to work with. And we'll talk a whole lot more about them. But a little bit about me. So I'm kind of a DevOps success story. I think thankful for this group. I was sysadmin working for a nonprofit, was cribbing up on DevOps in my spare time, and then ended up using that to land a job here at Garmin. So I'm pretty excited to be here. My title is application admin or system engineer. But I work with a pretty cool team called the Web Tech team. Oh, and before I talk about Web Tech, we're going to talk about Garmin. Just kind of give you some context for all the wide variety of things that we do and what the Edge team supports. So here's a quick promo video. It's not really to promote Garmin. I'm just trying to show you all the cool stuff we do.
When people think of Garmin, they think of that little thing that goes in your car and tells you how to get where you're going. The fact is, before we ever went down that road, we made GPS for people out on the water, helping those who like to fish or just spend time on their boats. Back then, we were up in the air, above the clouds, helping pilots navigate the sky. Now we're in the mountains, helping hikers find their way to majestic views. We're also on runners' wrists, swimmers too. We're even on handlebars, helping people get in shape, stay in shape, or keep their edge. Sure, we're still in cars, but now we make products for everywhere that people live, work, and play.
Cool. So, Garmin's a pretty big company, lots of different products, very distributed teams, but the team that I work with is the Web Technology Squad, and we're kind of a central, they don't like us to call it DevOps, but a central kind of facilitating team that helps standardize how we do things on the web. And so I am a part of that green quadrant up there, the Edge team. We've got ecosystem team, and James isn't here, right? No. Platform team, Jonathan, and security team, Alex. And this team's really kind of been building for some years now, and I think it's in a pretty good place. It kind of, different people from different areas kind of all came together to form this. Yeah. And so talking about the Edge team, what are we responsible for? So Aaron here, Edge Architect, we're kind of in Pushpak, part of the Edge team. We are a small little team. We're responsible for a whole lot of stuff. So our content delivery network is the kind of what you think of mainly. Global load balancing and traffic management between all of our different data centers. Global domain portfolio, how big is it now? 1,200 domains or something like that. External DNS, certificates for all those 1,200 domains, monitoring and statistics of all of that stuff, static web assets, download files, that kind of thing, and then troubleshooting everything. Typically, people always go and blame the network. Well, we're the network for the world of Garmin. So things kind of come to us first, and then we have to prove it's not us, or fix it once in a while. Yeah. So I'm going to first talk about Journey to the Edge, kind of giving a story and just context for CDN and some of the stuff we do. And just kind of, it's really high level, just kind of give you the lay of the land of how this works. And really going from it works on my machine to it works everywhere. It works in China, like I said. So you start out in the beginning, local host, right? Port 80, good to go. Apps, ta-da. And so I'm going to talk about just kind of 3 categories. There's more than this, but kind of like a basic www type of site, HTML, JavaScript, all that stuff. An API, and like a large file download. Those are kind of the 3 main categories of applications that we deal with. And they have different characteristics. But yeah, running great on my local host. And so in this scenario, we're talking about this is a very typical Garmin workflow. You have a user who's got a device, and maybe they saw it on the website, and then they need to update their device. They go to the API, get their manifest of what they need to get their updates, and then they get the downloads. And then they install it from their machine to their device. That's kind of a traditional Garmin thing to do. And so now we're going to take that to prod, right? So you have servers or Kubernetes containers, whatever you got, Pivotal, and you got a load balancer. Good, we're in prod. And because we're in prod, we need a certificate, and we need a public IP, and we need a public DNS name. And that's going to be how people access our applications. And looks good. They can hit it on port 443 now and get their applications securely, I guess. So as you develop, then you sell a whole bunch of products, hopefully, and now you've got traffic problems. And you can continue to scale out your servers and your load balancers a whole bunch. But at some point, you kind of go, hey, this doesn't seem very economical. Is there a better way to do this than just keep stacking hardware up to handle this? And there is. CDN. So you take your www and your download, and you throw it out on a proxy on the CDN. And it's going to be way more cost effective that way. And how it works is there's other companies that have all these servers, and they just cache your content closer to people, so it's faster. So if they're on the West Coast, they don't have to come all the way to Olathe to get that download file. They get it at the server closest to them. And it still comes, when it doesn't have it, it still comes back and talks to us. And yeah, so I've got a little slide here, kind of how this works. Again, kind of high level. I'm skipping TCP and all that stuff. But from an end user, you first do a DNS lookup, right? It's always DNS is the problem when things don't work. So end user device, they might have whatever DNS server. Hopefully it resolves www.garmin.com. Then it connects to that CDN. And to do that, it needs to do a TLS handshake. It's got to get the certificate information, make sure it can do kind of this handshake thing to make sure that they're talking on secure protocols. And then it does the HTTP part of that request. And then the CDN gets the request, and then it kind of makes a decision. I had a white one there. It doesn't look like it showed up. But it checks, is it cached? And so if it already has the file, it just gives it to the user. And if the time to live is still valid, it just gives it to them. If not, it has to do a second request back to the origin. And it's got to do that same thing again, another DNS lookup, another TLS handshake, and another get. And hopefully get served up from our healthy load balancer and application servers. And then it will cache the response if the origin says it's cacheable and serve it up. And so how the CDN kind of processes, and this is we'll talk a little bit more about these things, but it has different logic layers that it'll run through. And certain CDNs have more of this stuff than others. Cloudflare has a pretty good stack. But I'll talk more about some of the others we've worked with as well. So first, it's going to take kind of a IP-based look at things, the incoming request from that device, and say, hey, what's your IP? Do we have any rules to block that guy? Is it some attacker, right? It's going to run through a bunch of HTTP web application firewall rules. So you can do all kinds of cool stuff there. I'll talk about in another slide. Workers or page rules, that's kind of, again, more logic you can do of like, how do I want to cache this file, how long? You can do all kinds of like exclusion rules and like take this path and do something different with it than this other path. Talk a little bit more about that too. And the caching and compression, it'll check, again, is this file cached? Is it compressible? Can I squeeze some more space out of this thing to give the user a good experience? If it has to go back to origin, it will look up the DNS of your origin, and you can even sometimes do DNS load balancing at that level and go to 2 different origins, and then you hit your origin. And then it serves it on back. Okay, and then time to live. So when you talk about caching, again, think about a download file, right? That download file, you don't really, say it's big, like 300 gigs. Nobody would ever serve a file that big. But let's say you don't want a 300 gig request to come to origin for every request. So you want to set, how often do you want it to come back? How often does this file change? And so there's a whole bunch more, but this is kind of the simplistic view. You can set caching in 2 different places. You have this header, cache control header. Smax age is for like shared proxies, like a CDN. And it says, hey, how long should the CDN hold on to that? Let's hang on to that file for 3 months because it's not going to get changed. And then you say, how long should the device hold on to that? So the problem with the device holding on to it for 3 months or something is you have no way to purge that cache. If you have the CDN holding on to it for 3 months, you can emergency go and say, hey, I changed the file, quick, go purge all your servers and serve up the new one. With an end user device, you have no method of interacting there. So you have to be a little bit careful about that. One thing you can do is change your file name. Change the file name, new file, caching isn't a problem. But then the device has to know there's a new file. So there's some good strategies for managing all of that. One of the things our teams do is they will have like a manifest file that changes often, and then it refers to files that that file will get changed and tell them there's a new file name. And so that way you can do like forever device cache. Our Connect team's doing that really effectively. Okay, so back to our example. So you have CDN to the rescue. You've got, the API, though, is still hitting origin because you're like, hey, that thing isn't cacheable. It changes every request. Don't cache it. Just come to origin for that. I don't want to pay for CDN for that or whatever reason you didn't want to bring that through CDN. The problem then is DDoS or other kinds of attacks, right? So all that TCP firewall, HTTP web application firewall, that stuff can actually really protect you from attackers. If that thing is exposed, then, you have to implement all your protections at origin, and that means you're potentially dropping a ton of connections at origin, so you still have to deal with all that traffic for your firewalls and all your network equipment, all that. So you throw that behind the CDN, and you use the web application firewall to block DDoS, whether it's TCP, or you block different injection attacks, cross-site scripting. Again, different WAFs have a lot of different capabilities, but there's quite a bit out there. And again, you could implement that at your origin as well, but then you have to buy more hardware, and you have to manage that, and you have to, depending on the scale of it, it can be really tough to deal with. And the user will hopefully not get blocked, get his API just fine, and every request still comes back to origin for that, but you're analyzing at the edge the request before it comes to origin. All right, so I had mentioned China. How do you deal with China, right? So you can still cache out there, and depending on what CDN you're on, that might really work well for you or might not. Networks in China are tricky. You have to cross the Great Firewall of China often, and so dealing with it's a pain. Performance can be pretty bad. So we didn't mention the promo, but Garmin's a very international company, and the founding of it, there's kind of two founders, one here, one in China, and they met here at MNU and founded the company. So we have a very large office in China and tons of customers in China. They love our watches. So that's a concern. So what you can do is global load balancing. You can do path-based routing. You can do, obviously do it by domain name. And you can route individual apps separately with health checks. So maybe you want your API and customer data or something like that to live in China because you need that to be fast. But maybe your download, you're okay with it coming back to origin because they're large files or something like that. You don't want to copy all the data to China. You just let the CDN handle that. Also, we'll talk a little bit about different CDNs. Some of them have China network capabilities and some don't. If they don't, you will have to cross the Great Firewall of China. Normally, you'll be right, they'll put a data center right outside the firewall, and you just have to cross it. But it does affect some latency for sure. So now we're serving to China. And yay, went from localhost to China. So it's not the end. I'm going to talk a bunch more about, so that was a fake story. Now I'm going to talk about the reality of dealing with things at Garmin. So that was 3 apps. That's not what it's like here. So 2018, year of CDN migrations. Whew, it was a tough year. It was a tough year. So Aaron and I, we both started January last year. And Garmin had been with Akamai for a really long time. Too long. But Akamai was okay, right? It was good to us. No, okay. We also had StackPath and MaxCDN for kind of our download content. They were 2 separate CDNs, but kind of merged. Is that what happened, Jonathan? Yeah, there you go. Something like 150 unique hosted domains, somewhere between 10 and 70 petabytes of traffic, depending on which reports you looked at. 30 to 50 or more. I mean, I guess we had 2 things of 30 terabytes of net storage, so 60. And no usable logging. That was when we started. The logging stunk. If you wanted logs, they were there, but you had to know which network pop on Akamai they hit. Go and grab and there was no aggregator. You had to go get every log individually at all their, how many pops? Hundreds? It was not pretty. So in a pinch, we could do it. They had this grep tool. I'm not going to talk about the grep tool. I'm going to try to talk nicely-ish about Akamai. Again, they serve Garmin well. All right, so why migrate? Obviously, one of the, if you're talking about a migration, one of the main motivator is going to be cost, right? I'm not going to talk about specifics, but let's just say this is like millions of dollars worth of contracts, right? And so migrating CDNs for better costs is a good thing. And that's why we had Max and StackPath, because they were cheaper. But cost isn't always the best reason or the only reason you should consider moving. Our experience on Max and Stack, I'd say, is worse than Akamai. Again, they got the job done for what we needed for the most part. But these are some better reasons to migrate. So I'm going to talk about both of them. I'm really not trying to throw any one of them under the bus completely, but their interfaces were clunky. The rules engines were unpredictable and just hard to deal with. Slow change deployment. Changes took how long?
5 minutes.
Yeah, 20 to 45 minutes to 4 hours for changes. So if you want to change a cert, that's 4 hours. And if you biff it, tough. So that was not great. Inflexible certificate management. We had like all of our domains on the same cert, and so every time you wanted to change one, you had to like manage all of that, and it was bad. Again, no usable logging, and really one of our motivators too was China network. We wanted to have a better performance in China. So migration number 1, we did this, August-ish, September? April? Oh, okay, it was a long year. StackPath to Verizon Edgecast. So bonuses here, improved rules engine, improved customer service technical expertise. We had some issues with that on some of the other providers. Improved performance, especially Europe, which we have a lot of customers doing safety cameras and things in Europe. And cost savings, obviously, that was a factor. And we had about 35 sites that we needed to migrate. Mostly download sites, large file, big bandwidth stuff. And that one went okay. And one of those, though, we pushed back to Akamai. And so kind of deferred some pain on that one. So the big one was Akamai to Cloudflare. So something like 129 sites, we had like 30 or 40 days notice that we were going to move. We had, contractual reasons that we had to get it done fast, very little notice, and thousands of unique applications and services across all segments of Garmin, and kind of over a decade of like build it piece by piece kind of configurations for all of those sites, all those applications. So some of the challenges here, globally distributed application service owners. So finding out like, hey, how is this application going to perform when we move CDN? And why does this rule that doesn't make any sense, why is it there? Really hard coordinating all of that. Hundreds of unique configurations, tribal knowledge, difficult test scenarios. I mean, again, think about even just moving a network from one switch to another. They're always going to blame the network no matter what. And you don't know why they did that one weird thing. It's kind of like that. And then even just getting them to be able to test is kind of hard. People don't know how to do things like change host files and stuff like that. So very different configuration interfaces. So the way you set it up on Max, CDN versus Akamai versus Verizon versus Cloudflare, very different. And then we had a very small edge team. At the time, it was 2 of us. So that was quite a bit of work. Some of our strengths, we had a very supportive executive leadership team, supportive product owners, technical teams. Everyone kind of bought in, like, okay, like this makes sense. And we had a really good project manager, John from our front-end team came over, helped us out. We could not have done it without John. We needed John. And then we had engaged Asia team, APAC team, which part of the goal there was, again, helping get more people involved too. Like this, one of the big benefits was all these product owners are now engaged and know how CDN works a little better. And we have now kind of more empowered other teams to handle this stuff.
How many teams were you dealing with this migration?
Do you have any idea?
About 600
That's a lot of teams.
all over the world.
So 280 different teams. Oof. That was a rough month. So Cloudflare migration strengths, we couldn't have done it without them either. They had excellent enterprise sales and support. I think that was one of the question marks is like, okay, Akamai is known for being big enterprise, right? Cloudflare, I think, is really getting there, but they didn't have that reputation maybe as much. And they rolled out the red carpet for us, and they helped us import all of our config, our crazy, nasty XML-based Akamai configs. They have a really easy-to-use interface, so what was really clunky became really easy. Ridiculously quick to make changes. The changes go into effect within seconds generally, sometimes maybe up to a minute for global, but really it's like you'd make a config change and it is live. They did a bunch of bending over backwards to make it work for us. Emergency code changes and feature requests implemented within days and even hours. So we had lots of issues because of our legacy configs, and they helped us a ton to make this work. So some of the major hurdles, load balancer session stickiness didn't work 100%. So that's where you're going to 2 different data centers from Cloudflare. They normally do like a cookie-based approach, and that's supposed to work, and it worked for a lot of our teams, but we had one application that for some reason it did not work 100%. It was like, pretty small error ratio, I think. I don't know, maybe 5%, something like that. But they implemented IP-based session stickiness, and it worked like a charm. And they'd been testing that feature, and they're like, oh, we'll just roll it out for you today or tomorrow or whatever it was. It was crazy. SSL session tickets. Who knows what SSL session tickets are? Hey, the Garmin people. Yeah. So we had some devices that didn't work well with session tickets being enabled, and so we needed to disable them. That's a pretty low-level change, and Cloudflare, that's not a feature that they will ever tell you about, but they helped us implement that where they're disabling it for specific domains within a day, I think. It was crazy. Custom certificates required for some devices in China. That's kind of a pain point. We have to again, we have many, many years worth of products out there with very different capabilities, and they're out in the field for decades, and you have to support them. So some things only have certain CAs they allow. China sometimes only lets you have certain CAs. So it's some work to support, but they handled that really, really well. With other providers, it was not easy. With them, it was mostly painless. Once we figured it all out, what needed to happen. Other weird things like content chunking and content size mismatches. Anyways, whenever we had crazy scenarios, we would get a hold of them and they would figure it out really quickly, which was not our experience with any of the other CDNs. It was like, hey, we'll think about that for 2 weeks and get back to you kind of thing. And Cloudflare was like, boom, boom, boom. And then downloadg.garmin.com. That was the one that we had moved, kind of deferred the technical debt from the Max CDN migration to Akamai. And that is where our secure map downloads happen. This one was my burden to bear for this whole migration. So anytime you need a mapped update, or a kind of paywalled update of some kind, it's going to go through DownloadG, and that's kind of our tokenized download thing where that's kind of authenticated, and we have a lot of traffic on that. It's regularly 30 to 50 gigabits a second and spikes up into the hundreds. So it's a ton of traffic, and I think I have a little, so we have a query parameter on there that we have to validate. And in this case, we're validating on the CDN at the edge. We had 25 or 30 terabytes of files. We had to move them to the other provider. These were not served from origin. These are served from the provider's storage. The requests are in mixed case, and the files are stored sometimes in mixed case. but they're not the same case. And if anyone knows how to make an Apache configuration do that without using redirects, I would love to see it, but I don't think it's possible. So there was a whole bunch of file management business we had to deal with, and a whole bunch of, and this was, so we moved this one to Edgecast, and they helped implement that tokenization thing, and it was down to the wire on that one. Yeah, so that was a big, this was all in that month of pain of October. All right, so major wins. Significantly better performance in China, better performance overall, reduced costs. This is a big one, self-service config for teams, where teams are now, instead of like coming to us for all their configs, they can actually go and make a small change without taking us like a CR and hours of work to do. They can just kind of go like, hey, change the way that caches, or hey, change which origin this even goes to for like a path. Like they can make those changes really easily on their own.
Is that through Cloudflare's interface, or have you made an interface?
Through Cloudflare's interface. I'll talk about some stuff we built later, but their interface is very slick. Again, like everything's pretty user-friendly. Like it's the kind of thing where you can hand it off to a marketing team, and no, you can hand it off to a technical team that manages applications, and they know what to do, right? New usage possibilities with workers, we'll talk about that. Improved security from WAF. There was a lot, their WAF's pretty darn good. Improved security from their crypto settings, very collaborative vendor relationship, and best of all is logging. We both Edgecast and Cloudflare implemented logging. I'll talk a little bit about that later, but logs are very nice to have. Okay. So I really love Cloudflare. Edgecast was okay, but Cloudflare's interface is so good. So here's a little, just kind of some stats. This is dub, I think, for 30 days. I think that's dub. So anyways, really nice analytics. I'm a fan. Math major. I love charts. Real-time firewall. On Akamai, it was hours and hours and hours behind and unreliable. So with this, like if there was like a drop of traffic or something happened crazy here, I would see like that and be able to recognize and deal with it. Akamai, it was like 4 hours behind. 4 hours behind, yeah. Speed, this is a little graph I put together of like compression ratios. So like this is filtering out zeros, but most things are getting compressed like 5 times-ish, 4 to 5 times. Some stuff over 10 times compressed. Easy page rules, this is like really simple to put in a page rule. You put in your path, add a setting, deploy it, and it's live. Load balancing, so again, load balancing between different data centers. You can do health checks, different pools, geo, all the cool load balancing stuff. And then workers. And here's, did I mention logs? So here's all the log fields you get. A few that we kind of tweaked to get in there, like the geo one, but that's a lot of fields to have in Kibana. To go and find a problem, you can go and look, hey, show me just the ones where origin responded 500 and above, right? Tons of useful logs, and as the app admin who people are coming to solve their problems, like this helps me get my job done. I couldn't do it without this. I was bad at my job before this, to be honest. All right, so we made it through the migration, and it almost killed us, but things are better. So what's next? So since then, since October, we've been putting in more automation, more security, and starting to put applications on the edge with workers. So I talked about logging. We have a log puller. They also do push logs if you're on S3, which we're not, but they're working on push logs to us as well. But we built a pretty cool log puller that puts our logs into Elk, we have like a terabyte of logs a day, 1.5 trillion records a day. That's a lot of logs. And we keep them for a week. And at some point, we'll figure out how roll-ups work and get some longer stats. We built, Pushpak and I built a CDN purge tool. So one of the pain points, again, lots of different people, and they don't know, like, how do I go and purge that content? And we were having to create logins for everybody on 2 different CDNs. It was a pain. So we built a tool where they can go and log in with LDAP and purge their site. And they don't have to know which CDN they're on. They just come to our interface, type in their URLs, hit purge. It purges them wherever they are. We also built an API with that. And now Pushpak implemented scheduling. So you can, if you're a marketing person, you can go say, hey, we have a product launch 6 a.m. I don't want to wake up, purge the thing at 6 a.m. And it works. Some other things we're working on, a Backblaze token roller. So it's like an S3 style storage, private bucket, so everyone can't get to the content. We only want them accessing it through Cloudflare. So to do that, you need to authenticate Cloudflare to the bucket. So you roll a token. You go and update the token every hour or whatever. And then that tokenized download thing, we're now kind of looking at doing that on Cloudflare. So I worked on that worker to kind of do some crypto functions, check your token that it's valid. This was a lot of fun to work on. I pulled my hair out on it. I'm bad at JavaScript, but workers are pretty cool, and I got it working. Bird's Eye is on that now, and Download G maybe at some time soon. Better be. Oh. Okay, so security focus, that's one of the things we're looking at a lot for this year is ratcheting up our web application firewall rules, increasing all our site security, and working with DevSec, OffSec to really like put us in a good security posture and to kind of turn it up to as far as we can go in security without breaking applications. All right, so more on workers by request. So I think workers are a pretty cool thing. If you don't know what they are, it's basically, I think I have a slide for that, yeah. JavaScript at the edge. So you respond to a request. So someone asks for anything, www.garmin.com/foo. And that is then obviously intercepted by Cloudflare. And while they're intercepting it, they basically are running a JavaScript, and they can do things with the request. And you have a nice interface for designing that. And so it's basically just JavaScript. You can also run WebAssembly. You can access their key value. So if you want to go and store some content or a JSON or something out there that you want to reference, you can do that. You can kind of use the other Cloudflare features like manage how compression works, things like that. So you have a single JavaScript file, and you can use Webpack. I have not done that successfully yet because I ran into size problems, but there's probably good ways of doing that. And then you have some utilization limits. So this is kind of similar to what people are doing with Lambda, I think. They have Lambda Edge now. It's kind of similar to that. I haven't used Lambda at Edge, so I can't really compare it, but I think a big advantage is you have all of Cloudflare's network to work with, which is way closer to home for most people than Amazon. And honestly, again, I haven't used Lambda at Edge, but their interface is really slick, and we'll see it here in a second. So some of the worker examples from Cloudflare and others. So they have a blog that's really awesome, and they're posting stuff every day, every week for sure, different ideas, different things customers are doing. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. I'll do a little demo here at the end, or maybe just show you what I built last night. But anything you want to do with a request. You can make multiple requests out to external services or your own APIs. And then kind of aggregate it or do whatever you want and serve it back. And so it's kind of a way to really build an application at the edge and respond very fast. You don't have to think about how far it is to the closest AWS if you are, I don't know, in Australia. You probably don't have applications deployed there. But now your applications run close to them in Australia, wherever they are, and respond in milliseconds to the request with logic that runs maybe customer-specific, path-specific, cookie-specific, whatever you want. It's pretty cool stuff. I want to see, I don't know if Alex is going to go for OAuth at the edge, but they have a thing out there for doing it if you want to go try it. I have some friends that do like logs from the edge, so that's like you can do custom logs based on the request that aren't just the normal log functions. That's kind of cool. They'll like log back to their own API. Yeah. Some things that we're working on: post handshake cipher suite rejection. So you do your like TLS handshake, and one thing you can do is say, hey, I only want TLS 1.2, and I only want these cipher suites, right? And if they don't, reject them. Well, the problem with that is you don't really know you did it because it happened like before the handshake happened. You have no information about the request that was dropped because you haven't accepted a request. So what you can do is accept the request, then check it, and then log it, and then drop it. And so and you can drop it more gracefully. You say, hey, update your browser, instead of just say, no, you can't come here. WebAssembly dynamic image resizing, we're kind of looking at that maybe. There's some examples out there for doing that. Full content rendering, the front-end team's excited about that possibility. Is that coming along?
Not quite.
Okay. So that's where, again, multiple different sources of content and whatever rendered at the edge and cached differently at the edge, and so it happens a lot faster. And that's especially if you have like customer login, you need to display their information. You can kind of do some of that rendering at the edge without, and then just grab that one request you need. All right. Why is this not? Oh, so this is what it looks like. Cloudflareworkers.com is free to go poke around with. You can go mock up whatever you want there and just kind of go to town. Obviously, you can't deploy without an account. I think so Cloudflare's basic, they have a free tier. Workers is not included in that. It's $5 a month to get 1 million requests. So that's pretty cheap, I think. 1 million requests, that can get you up and running. They have a thing that they announced but isn't live yet called workers.dev. I think signups are closed. But you could sign up and it was like give you a free Workers account under their workers.dev domain name. And it's, again, kind of more poking around, but you could actually like run traffic through it to kind of play around. Yeah, so their interface, this is kind of it here. On the left here, you have kind of like where your code is. You have an update, and then you have a little browser view where it like in real time updates. There's a console log that's really handy. It's basically like the developer tools from Chrome. They kind of import it into their interface. So this is kind of the boilerplate they give you. So you have an event listener. You take the event, and then you handle it. And you have this request object, which is like the HTTP request, the URL, the headers, all that stuff. And then in their basic, this is just going to origin. That await fetch request is going to go then to origin to make the request. So I put together a simple example last night, again, starting from their kind of boilerplate. And I was like, hey, what can unfortunately, I can't show off like some of the Garmin stuff because there's sensitive stuff in some of those. I probably could have showed some of the front end stuff, but nah. So I was like, I'll put together a quick little also the front end ones are really hard to read.
Yeah, they're pretty well.
They're like, no, they're well made. They're just long and lengthy and lots of logic. So let's do a simple one, right? So this one is just, is Cloudflare the name server? So give me a domain name, and I'll go do a lookup using Cloudflare's DNS over HTTPS API. They have like a DNS API. And I can go look for an NS record and see, hey, does that NS record contain Cloudflare? And if it is, return true. If it's not, return false. All right. That's just is that the boilerplate? Yeah, I think so. Oh, this is the beginning. So I changed in here, I grabbed the query parameter. So the request would be like, and you can do this one, I'll maybe post the code somewhere. You can do this one in cloudflareworkers.com, just to kind of test. And you just set like anything with a query parameter, name equals domain.com, and it will, you could type Wikipedia in there and it wouldn't matter. But then just with this query parameter in the worker interface, and it will show the results. So first, I have to grab that query parameter. So I have a find query param function. There it is. So I take the URL and I make it a new URL. I pull the search params off of that for name. If there is no name, then I give you a console log so you know you goofed up. And I probably should error handle that better, but again, this is not production. And then I also return the name. So this is just returning that query parameter. It's really simple. And then this is the is it Cloudflare name server function. So pass that name in there. I start with false. I set up some headers to make this so that this, I'm going to make a request there on line 46 to Cloudflare's API, line 45. And I just take that name, shove it into their API with another query parameter for type name server, make the request, get it back. And I get back a JSON thing, and now I have to parse it, right? So I take the body, turn it into JSON. I iterate over the answer section of that JSON. I should have showed the JSON, I guess. There's like kind of a piece of it there on the right. And if that data includes Cloudflare, which you see that one, this is the Gagne.com, it does contain it, and it will return true. And in my little demo, it does return true, which is pretty cool. So, I mean, I could pull it up and show you, but that's the end. So, any questions?
A project I was working on 2-3 years ago, they had problems with Cloudflare in China. I guess the Great Wall of China was blocking Cloudflare because it protected politically edgy types of sites. But it seems since then, Cloudflare has partnered with another CDN in China. So what was your experience in China since you guys have this?
Yeah, so the question is Cloudflare and China and Great Firewall, how does it work? Sometimes there's been rumors of problems. So yeah, they partnered with Baidu. And so it's like I meant to put it in the slide. There's a button. It's really not that simple, but there's a button to turn on China Network. Now, to do that, you have to have an ICP license, which is a license to operate in China. If you have that and you talk to Cloudflare support, they'll turn that button on, and you can turn it on or off kind of at will once you have it enabled. So there's some small differences running on Baidu's network than Cloudflare's, but the interface is all the same. And it works pretty darn good. Connect.garmin.com, which is one of our big mobile apps, is really big in China. Performance improved 600% from Akamai, which was outside of China Network, into China Network. So way better.
So does Cloudflare help you get that license to go in China, or do you have to do that yourself?
They give us the shoe, but
Yeah.
But we do have
Sorry.
offices inside of China as well, so we have a legal team there. But yes, it is possible. It is not. I'm working on a new license for a different domain, and it's not easy to apply right now. And if you want to do video, it's a completely different license.
For the stream, getting an ICP license is not easy. Find somebody to help you. Any other questions?
You get a t-shirt. You get to pick first.
More questions?
Up there.
So I'm just curious, all the work you did on replacing the CDN,
Yeah.
did the business start that conversation with complaints? Did you start it from the inside out, saying we need to do something better? Was it a combination? What was the drivers from the business side first? Or were there drivers from the business side?
There were no drivers from the business side. The business was incredibly resistant. I was hired at Garmin to rock the boat. And I rocked the boat a lot.
So they were, or at least they thought they were.
They didn't know what was wrong, and they didn't know that there was a problem. But once we started adding, we use App Dynamics.
Yep.
Once we started using additional levels of monitoring, real user monitoring of a lot of different stuff, and I started getting logs and stats, and I showed them that what they thought was okay was not okay, and then I explained that they're paying a stupid amount of money to Akamai. Akamai knew me from my previous company very well, and that was one of my first decisions as the architect when I came in, is to literally drop Akamai as quick as possible.
Yeah, I didn't properly introduce Aaron, I guess. He managed Apple's global CDN, so he came in with quite a bit of knowledge about the situation, and then backed it up with data. And now I think everyone's really happy. I think all the app teams are happy. The APAC team is very happy with the performance improvements. Like, I'm really happy because I actually have logs to fix problems. I don't think anybody is unhappy with it, and the cost savings, I think,
Very substantial.
Very substantial.
And our APAC team's actually able to manage their own web properties now. Taiwan, obviously, there's a significant time difference. It is 8 a.m. there now, Wednesday morning, and they would wait and stay up to the middle of the night to talk to David and I when we were here in the morning to be able to request web changes or property changes. So I flew to Taiwan, trained them, and now I have a David in Taiwan, and they're rolling everything on their own now, and they are setting up new web properties. They are completely self-sufficient. And I would say Kevin, who's on our OMT team, he would make Akamai changes. It would take 45 minutes. I would get notified every time he'd make a change. And now he can do that stuff within seconds. And they're all doing all their own stuff without ever bothering me about anything.
I mean, could you imagine if your Jenkins deploy took 45 minutes every time? How scared you'd be to roll a change? Like, that stinks. So yeah, it's like the time for improvements for all the teams is way better now. Everything is like API first, so if we need to automate any kind of change, it can all be triggered. So that's pretty awesome.
So the value is, I guess if I'm sitting here as a business person in the business side of this, the value to them first was the savings.
Yeah.
Secondly was agility. I'll just
Yep.
never use the term. So they could get things done quicker.
Yep.
And things could happen faster. What did they really see when you said agility?
They were happy. Once we gave an overview of the interface, it was pretty good. A lot of it was about our customer experience. When I started showing, because my whole job as an edge architect, I do a lot of things to annoy the business because I make changes that are going to impact them. Kevin can speak to that. I probably annoyed him a lot of times. But my first responsibility is to our customers having a good experience. And if our customers are not having a good experience, then I am failing at my job. And I take it very personally when we would get even the weirdest things. So we have a retail store over there and a customer service center, and people would leave angry Yelp reviews because our download web properties were slow. And it would take 10 hours to download a map update on Akamai. And I took that personally. And my VP and director sat down with me, and they're like, here are the problems that we need to fix. how are we going to fix these, Aaron? And David and I figured it out. And our customers are very, very happy. And like he said, our speed difference, our web property connect is now faster in China than it is in America, which is not something that ever happens. And we would not have been able to do that without Cloudflare. So,
other questions?
Were there any HA or DR improvements that came from?
Yeah, so we had some HA exercises this last year that kind of showed that we had some work to do on certain applications, and just kind of in general, like I think it's still something that, I mean, not every application needs to be HA, and it's always kind of a journey to get more and more and more HA, and how you handle outages, how you trigger failovers, and what needs to happen. But yeah, like so the load balancing piece, being able to do health checks, so Akamai had some of that. Again, it was kind of clunky to set up, expensive, I think.
it was very expensive, yes.
Yeah, and so like not very many things had that. And then we were toying with using Route 53 for like DNS-based load balancing. That was okay, but when you think about having to have, it got very expensive because again, you had to have like a DNS name for, like if you're doing path-based load balancing, you got to have a DNS name for every one of those paths. And so we were looking at, thousands and thousands of dollars for load balancings and health checks and stuff because they're like $50-something a piece. So it just is kind of bundled in Cloudflare and works better than AWS.
It's bundled in our contract.
Sure.
That is not standard. So, yeah.
Yeah. Again, I'm not the money guy in this scenario, but from a technical standpoint, way better. Again, teams are now empowered to manage their own, which was not possible before. So yeah, that's definitely like a big improvement. I don't know if that was like a driver for it, but it's definitely something that we have seen benefit from.
You mentioned the path-based load balancing, something we wanted for years.
Yeah, we really, we did it in minor little cases here and there with Akamai, but it was difficult, expensive, and painful to.
We went from 10 or 12 load balancers on Akamai that we have 400 now on Cloudflare. Path-based load balancers, and actually now it's API driven. We have teams for some of our auto OEM projects that are actually creating new load balancers every time they do a deploy or they're doing updates. They'll go and update origin servers, health checks, all that stuff. So
you can do all kinds of stuff, especially with workers, like A/B testing and like slow migrations and all that kind of stuff too.
Are you guys doing like livery deployments?
I think some of the teams.
some teams are.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? How many of you guys use CDN now? Like, cool. Yeah, I think. Cloudflare is free tier, even for your personal website. Like, you should all just do that. Like, it's so easy and painless to set up, and why wouldn't you improve your performance of your thing if you could, right? So, free tier is free. So, I'm gonna snap a quick picture for Cloudflare because I said I would.
Hi, Cloudflare.
Yeah. There we go. Cool. All right.
Awesome. So thank you to both of our sponsors, Garmin. And Cloudflare, who I think has some giveaways. People that ask questions, you better get to the box first, or I can bring it up here for the DevOps Days KC t-shirts. But I think now we're going to do a raffle from the people that put in their name beforehand. We have 3 mediums, 8 large, and 4 2XLs. No smalls, no extra large. So, do you want to?
They run small.
Do you want to take the? You pick the first one.
Steve something? CenturyLink?
Yeah.
Woo. And we have planners down here as well, if you want a planner.
And I have Andrew Albers from Cerner. Woohoo! Your turn. You come on down. Get a wall top.
James something from Garmin. You have horrible handwriting.
What size do you want? Larger page?
Yeah.
All right. I have Lance Powell. You got a Garmin?
What size do you want? It's probably your third Cloudflare
What's up,
t-shirt.
brother? Sneaking in right there. I haven't seen you in a while.
Jonathan, come get your planner. I know you want one. Come get your planner. I made him go into the drawing. I wouldn't give him one.
I have, I think it is Zenas Lopez at CenturyLink. Did I say it right? Okay. Zenas. Awesome. Woo!
Yeah, we're probably everybody just gets a t-shirt at this point. Brian from Quest. What size do you want? We have, yeah, we have lots of large. I need a t-shirt cannon.
I have Kevin Jones at Garmin.
Kevin, what size do you want?
Woo!
They have more Cloudflare t-shirts than they know what to do with. So. Dustin from TGS.
Oh, there he is. And big thanks to Dustin for helping set all this up.
Oh, sorry. Wow.
Don't be.
Karthika, are you here? Oh, hi. I didn't know you were coming. Hi, from Garmin. Sorry.
Last one. Evan Harmon.
We have a meeting. Yeah. What's up? Do you have one of these already? Oh, I never gave you one?
Anybody?
Oh, they have your size last time? Okay, cool.
Right.
We have
Then-
large and two.
Then do we just give out the rest?
Yeah.
All right, do the people that ask questions get DevOps Days KC t-shirt or get to ruffle through it first? You have first chance at it. All right. What's that? We mind? And then, is there anything else anybody wanted to add, or is it now just kind of social time? Or what's up? Wait, did we have a second presentation? Oh, darn. All right. I thought sometimes people were like, hey, I wanted to present this other thing. It's happened before. I'm not kidding. Like 2 or 3 times. All right, then. Hang out and try to eat the rest of the pizza.
Restrooms are over that way to the right.